Okay, we're gonna try something new out for 2020. I have dedicated myself to finally sit down and read the entire Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. Many of you have probably already done this. I've never read all the books. I've seen all the movies. I've always wanted to read all the books, and I've decided to finally sit down and do that, okay? And you can watch my progress at home, because every video coming up, I'm going to include the current copy in the background that I'm, like, reading, so we can see where my progress is, and you could be like, hey, Matt, alright, you've been stuck on the Sorcerer's Stone for about 4 months now. It's time to move on to, Chamber. I'm like, hey, you know what? I started reading that last night, and I'm already, like, 100 pages into it. I think we'll be okay. When we start getting into, like, Goblet of Fire, Order of Phoenix territory, that might take me a little longer, but for right now, it's smooth sailing. Alright, so today we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff. We're going to be talking about the Sea Kings and their mysterious speech in the last chapter. We're going to be talking about something that Oden spoke about involving JoyBoy, and we're also going to be talking about Toki a little bit, because Toki, when you introduce a character into your series with the ability to jump into the future, a few issues arise, not the least of which being a few people that are like, hey, wait a second, if Roger was 10 years too early to reach Laugh-Tale, why didn't he just, like, go back to Wano with Oden and use Toki's magic power to literally jump an exact distance into the future? Because it's not like a gamble with Toki. It's not like, alright guys, we're going into the future. I don't know how far, I'm just gonna fling you and we'll see. No, she can do this exactly, alright? And also, in extension with that, I'm not sure if we're talking about Lady Toki exactly here, but just involving the Time fruit. There's something else that might be involving JoyBoy himself. So we'll cover all of this. So first, let's talk about the speech that the Sea Kings made. I talked about this in the review. In the official translation, which came out today, I read through it. Honestly, it was pretty much the same, which, honestly, I just kind of got really lucky about there. But no, I was looking at that one translation, and I was like, that looks about right, and I honestly just got lucky because I'm like, I can't read Japanese that way or anything, so I'm like, it looks okay, and it ended up being that. The only thing they really changed in the official was instead of using the word king, they used a more like gender-neutral term. They used the term sovereign, which is what I figured kind of what it meant. Like when they Sea Kings in that one translation said king, I didn't immediately think, oh, they're talking about a male specifically being born. I figured they meant like their ruler being born. They used sovereign there. They were talking about that their sovereign would soon be born, 10 years from now, another 15 to grow up. Those numbers were accurate. The whales in a distant sea are becoming also excited, and they also mention that these two kings, these two rulers, will eventually meet. They also mention that this time it might be the right time. So all of that stuff I covered there. Pretty good. All right. So let's just take this piece by piece here. If we're going to continue with the logic that one of these sovereigns is Shirahoshi, who is Poseidon, the ruler of these Sea Kings, we can assume that the other one may in fact either be the reincarnation of JoyBoy or could be JoyBoy themselves, because the Toki no Mi is a thing, all right? Now, you kind of see where I'm going with this, because later on in the exact chapter, Oden, when he's arriving at Wano, he mentions, yeah, Wano used to be an isolated nation for a reason, involving the Kozuki family, but now the borders of the country must be opened up because of JoyBoy's appearance. He doesn't really say return. In both translations, he said when JoyBoy appears, all right? So you could take that to either mean, like, the way I took it in the review of, like, all right, there might be some sort of reincarnation thing here, or if reincarnation isn't your forte, if you're not into whole that sort of stuff, like, the reincarnation of JoyBoy was born in Monkey D. Luffy. If you're not a fan of that, JoyBoy maybe perhaps being some sort of title. I threw out the idea that maybe JoyBoy is the title for, like, the head of the D clan or something, because maybe JoyBoy, back during the Void Century, he founded the clan of D, and then, he eventually died and then passed on the mantle, and then maybe Luffy could pick up the mantle, or Dragon, or somebody else that's a very prominent D, right? This also kind of goes back to when Whitebeard at Marineford was like, Roger's not waiting for you, Teach, implying that every member of the Will of D might be a candidate for this position of, like, ruler, but, it's like some are more than others, and the way that Whitebeard looked at it is like, yeah, Roger's not waiting for you. I don't know who the hell it's gonna be who's gonna have the D that's gonna be the next ruler, but it's not gonna be you, Teach, okay? So, that's the one way you can look at it, but you can also look at it like, alright, what if JoyBoy 800-something years ago had to escape his current time, kind of the same thing that Toki had to do, use Toki's power, or maybe some, like, a previous user of the time fruit. If we're assuming everything Toki says is accurate, and she was born, it would have been like around 830 years before the present storyline, and at some point in there, she got her Toki powers. Either she used the powers to send JoyBoy into the far future, or the previous user of the Toki no Mi did it to send JoyBoy into the far future, and then the Toki powers passed down to Lady Toki. You know, I'm thinking also Toki itself, like, her name is more of a title, if anything. Like, it's like anybody that has the power of the Toki fruit will be bestowed the name Toki, because it's massively convenient that she has the same. That'd be like if Luffy's name was, you know, Gumu D Luffy. You know, it'd be like, what? Okay, he has the same name as his fruit, right? Okay, so you know, considering time travel's a thing, and considering the way Oden was speaking about it, the arrival of JoyBoy is like, all right, I'm flinging myself, or somebody else is flinging JoyBoy into the future to arrive at this point, and everyone has to kind of prepare for his arrival. The Sea Kings, the whales, they're feeling it, you know, that could definitely be a possibility. You know, and that way we don't have to go through, like, the prophecy crap. We don't have to do with, like, you know, oh, Monkey D. Luffy will be the new child of prophecy or anything like that. No, it could be, like, literally JoyBoy. Back during the Void Century, he, you know, had that relationship with Poseidon. They had the Noah. There was a promise involved there. The way that we took that JoyBoy, the reason he had to kind of, like, squelch on his promise, I don't know if squelch is the word I'm looking for, but we're going with it. That sounds like something out of Rick and Morty. But anyway, it's like, okay, the reason that JoyBoy squelched on his promise was because he died. Something happened, he ended up dying. Like, the world government found out who he was or where he was and killed him and blah, 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 right? Well, that might not actually be the case. It might have been a situation where, like, ah, crap, I can't stay in this timeline anymore. If I want to survive and the world needs me to survive, I have something else I need to do, then I'm gonna have to use the time powers to fling into the future, to the far, far, far future, and, that means I'm going to have to, you know, leave my promise with Poseidon, the original Poseidon, or one of the, maybe not the original, there might have been Poseidons before her, but the one back during the Void Century, right? So that's why maybe he wrote that apology letter on the Poneglyph. I'm just like, I'm really sorry, this wasn't the way that should have went. I mean, maybe think of it this way. Think of it like the whole purpose of the Noah and that, like, red line destruction theory that me and a lot of other people are throwing out there. Like, the red line is supposed to fall apart. The three ancient weapons are required for that to be destroyed. All of that stuff should have happened 800 years ago. Like, as soon as the world government started gaining power, boom, that's when the red line should have been destroyed. That's when the ancient weapons should have been utilized. That's when the Noah should have been used to ferry all of the fishermen and merfolk to safety. That stuff should have happened all the way back then, but something happened. Something happened that resulted in them not going through with this plan. It was probably out of their control. Something devious the world government or Eam did, if Eam really did exist back then. Something happened, it went wrong. And JoyBoy was like, shit, crap, alright. Alright, write an apology letter. I'm really sorry, I couldn't, it didn't work out. Don't worry, one day it will. Use the time powers, fling into the future, and then JoyBoy will appear at some point. It'd be like the Terminator. It'll be like, you know, after the Wano arc wraps up, Oda will cut to a random scene in the ocean, and then, like, a lightning bolt will just shoot out of the sky, and then, you know, like, boom! Dun dun. Dun dun. JoyBoy gets up and he's just this massive dude. He has a giant straw hat and he's just like, dun dun. Dun dun. You know, little caption appears, you know, JoyBoy, a traveler from the distant past. You know, it's not impossible. It's time travel's a thing. Going along with Lady Toki, considering we're just talking about her here, that's another question a lot of people were asking. You know, if Oden is aware of the time powers, you know, Toki told him about the time powers, and if Roger's aware of this, you know, why doesn't Roger just go back to Wano with Oden and like, hey, Toki, yarg, it's nice to see you again, I'm Gold D. Roger, hey, turns out we got to Laugh Tale just a bit early, and I got about maybe 4.5 months to live, so maybe, if you feel it, you could use your mystical time powers to send us all 10 years into the future, and, you know, so we could get back there, right? Why didn't he do that? I'm like, well, I can honestly think, like, besides just Oda maybe not thinking about it, which, you know, you don't want to immediately jump to that conclusion, all right? But, you know, it's like, let's assume there is, a specific reason for that. First off, like, Toki probably doesn't like to use that power unless she absolutely needs to, all right? She probably only uses that power when she is up against a wall, about to be killed or captured, as in the case with, you know, Karma's crew, and it's like, or in the situation where we were at the end of the, you know, the castle was crumbling and being burned by Kaido and the calamities and stuff, and she's like, all right, I gotta use my powers to let the scabbards escape. She decided to lay down her life at Wano. Like, that was her decision. Like, Toki could have went into the future with them as well, but she decided, you know what, I'm gonna stay here because this is where I fell in love. This is where I married my husband. Well, I guess technically they got married on a ship, but you know what I mean. Like, this is where she fell in love, and this is her homeland, and she blood and sweated with the other peasants and everything to till the fields and everything. So it's like, this is where she felt like her story should end, okay? So that's what happened there with Toki, but she sent the scabbards in the future, and that was like really dire situations there. So she probably doesn't like to use that powers just on a whim. Now, if Roger would have asked her to do it, she probably would have. I mean, there's no reason for her to say, no, Roger, I can't do that, you know? Because she could, so maybe the thing lies more with, like, Roger and the crew. Maybe they didn't feel comfortable asking her for whatever reason. I can understand why Oden might not have went into the future, because Oden, I think, he might have wanted to go back to Wano to make sure everybody was okay, and that the country was, you know, he has to solve some problems with, like, Orochi and everybody taking over the country, because Oden knew something was up. So it might have been a situation of, like, okay, Oden can't go into 10 years into the future. He can't make the time jump, because he has to go back to Wano and take care of it right now, because if he waits 10 years, it's going to get even worse. And without Oden, we can't go 10 years into the future, because we might need to read poneglyphs, we might need somebody that can read that language, and we can't do it. And keep in mind, Roger was really, like, it even was mentioned, like, his illness had extended to, like, a terminal thing. He was in the last few months of his life. So the time frame is ridiculously thin here. And, honestly, like, even if some other people on Roger's crew mentioned that to him, like, what if, like, Scopper or Buggy or somebody spoke up on the crew of, like, hey, Roger, what if we use Toki's powers? Roger might just been like, yarg, it's okay. We tried our best, gentlemen. It's all right. I don't got much time left in the world, so don't worry about it. Don't worry. The next generation will find it. And I think also Roger, he found it more fun to start that great pirate era. Like, he's like, all right, I can't be there for it, but I'll try to have a child, and then the child can grow up and maybe do it. But if that doesn't work out, that my own child finds it, tell you what I'll also do. I'll incite an entire revolution, so to speak. I'll create an entire era with my dying breath. And you know that when he's walking to his execution, he's smiling because he knows what he's going to do. Nobody else knows. The Marines think, oh yeah, we're gonna be snuffing out the life of the Pirate King. That'll show all those pirates what the Marines are all about, not to screw with us. And Roger's like, okay, if you say so. He gets up there and he's like, hey guys, go find my treasure! Oh, you son of a... And so it's like, yeah, like Roger knew what he was doing, so it's like, maybe Roger's like, yeah, maybe if we go back to Wano and we talk to Toki and we jump into the future. But keep in mind, by the way, let's say they did do that. Let's say they went back to Wano because Toki was at Wano. Like, if Toki was on the ship with them when they got to Laugh Tale, that's kind of a different story. You know, they arrive at Laugh Tale with Toki still on board, like she didn't get sick. And it's like, oh, all right, 10 years out of date. All right, Toki, take it away. Toki power, boom, and then there you go. But if they had to go all the way from Laugh Tale, backtrack all the way to Wano again, they might not have had enough time, because, you know, the time frames of this are all over the place. Like, Oda doesn't actually specify, like, how long it takes to go from Wano to Laugh Tale. You know, he doesn't specify that crap. So it's like, it might have taken months to go from Wano to Laugh Tale, and then another few months to go to Laugh Tale, back to Wano, use the time powers, then they would have to go back to Laugh Tale again. They probably just didn't have enough time to travel to those places. From what we understand with Toki's powers, she can send people into the future in the same spot that they got sent. She can't, like, all right, I'm going to send you into the future, but, like, on the other side of the planet. From what we've seen with her powers, she can't do that. Or maybe she could, but we haven't seen that yet, okay? So that's probably the reason, like, either Roger was like, don't worry about it, there's not enough time anyway to even go back to Wano to find her, and I don't want to ask her for a favor like that. Tell you what, I'll just go off on my own, try to get a kid, just, you kid, you're gonna be my successor. And then after that, I'm just gonna, on my dying breath, I'm just gonna incite, people to go out and try to find my treasure and, like, propose a challenge to them, and that's pretty much all I can do as a pirate king at this point. Okay. So that's the situation there. The whales, I talked about that in the review, in that, like, little supplemental thing I had to talk about because I forgot to mention it when I did it. But the whale thing, all right? I'm assuming they're talking about island whales, and they're talking about how the whales are very excited at the coming of this king, this era that's arriving, or this sovereign that's arriving. We always assumed when we first ran into Laboon, the reason Laboon was banging his head against the red line was because he wanted to get back to Brook, and that was definitely part of it. But then we see those other island whales on, when the Straw Hats arrive in the New World by Punk Hazard, and they also all have the same scars. Now, I guess you could also throw out the idea, like, oh, the reason, maybe Laboon was part of their pod, and they got separated, and that's the reason they're trying to get back to Laboon, but I think it's more than that. I think it's more of just, like, an innate thing for these island whales to all bang their heads against the red line, because it's, like, right in the middle of their, like, migratory path. Like, maybe I think the island whales were stated to originate in the West Blue, because that's where Laboon was, but let's say they have, like, a yearly or every, because the island whales seem like they live a really long time. The Sea Kings were talking about how they're, the island whales specifically, so maybe the Sea Kings and the island whales have, like, about the same lifespan or something like that, whereas the Sea Kings are giant monsters that are more like omnivores. They can eat, meat and vegetation and all that stuff, and they can attack giant sea beasts and ships. Whales, the island whales are about as big, they're just a lot more docile, alright? They're a lot more peaceful, gentle giants kind of creatures, right? But they're still very long-lived. So let's say they originate in the West, but they have, like, a migratory thing. Like, every 10 years or so, they go to the Grand Line, and before the Red Line existed, they were able to, like, circumnavigate the entire world, like that path, and then they return back to their homeland, whatever. But now that the Red Line exists, if we're assuming that it was, like, artificially constructed, that's getting in the way of their path, and that's why they're pissed. That's why they're like, dang it, like, so that's why they're doing that. So that's implying that. So the red line crushing destruction theory, I think it just becomes, I don't know if I'm just grasping at straws here, but it seems like that red line destruction theory and then the world becoming one ocean, one piece, that seems more likely by the day. All right. Yeah. So that was a thing there. I think Roger specified something along the lines of, that, like, there will be a king to, reign over us at one point. That's coming there. It won't be Roger, of course, because he knows he's going to die, but, someone will be arriving there. So the other person that the Sea Kings might be speaking about, it could be Luffy, or if we're going to go along with that time travel theory, let's throw JoyBoy in there. Let's say, all right, JoyBoy tried to do something with Poseidon 800 years ago. That didn't work out. There have been other Poseidons born in the meantime, not very many, but maybe like 2 or 3 maximum. There's been other Poseidons throughout that course of history. Maybe they don't know, if JoyBoy did jump into the future, they don't know when he's going to appear again. All right? He might, we don't know the whole story. I'm not even going to try to, figure out how that works. But maybe, like, JoyBoy jumped into the future. Nobody else knows where he's going to pop up. So every time a Poseidon is born, they're like, oh, it's a new Poseidon. Maybe this time JoyBoy will arrive. Not this time. And then that Poseidon grows old and dies. And then a couple hundred years later, another Poseidon is born. Like, maybe this time JoyBoy will appear. Doesn't happen. So this time, considering it's the story that we've been following for, 90-something volumes at this point, and Shirahoshi got born and everything, and the way that the whales and the Sea Kings are being excited, if JoyBoy is going to appear in the flesh, this would be the time to do it. This would be the moment where he got flung into the future and then he actually appears and JoyBoy's there, and then you have Poseidon next to him, and then they can, like, finally reunite, not saying it's like a romantic, actually, I could see that with Shirahoshi, because Shirahoshi's line to, like, Vanderdecken, it's like a joke. It's like every time someone tries to hit on Shirahoshi, she's this, like, I'm sorry, but you're just not my type. It was a joke that she always says that. What if that's because her type is JoyBoy. Like, JoyBoy is huge. He's like a giant, or if not a giant, he's a big boy, right? So, what if that happens? If it's like JoyBoy arrives from the past, meets Shirahoshi, and Shirahoshi's like, you're my type! Like, it's like, oh, it came full circle in more ways than one! That would be cool, right? That would be a cool way to do it. And so then the two king, you know, it's like finally, after 800 years, JoyBoy's like, ah, my lovely Poseidon, it's finally time for us to change this world, right? And then right there, right when you think everything's working out, JoyBoy's back. That's when Oda throws us the biggest curveball in the Major League circuit, and it's revealed that JoyBoy is the final villain of this story, and Shirahoshi, he's gonna try to manipulate her to destroy the Red Line and destroying the world, and Eam was actually the good guy this entire time. Oda, you might have fooled everybody else, but you're not fooling me. Or, okay, Barry was the one that came up with that theory. I'm sorry. I'm taking credit for Barry's idea. All right, I'm sorry. Yeah, Barry looked into the future with his mighty, beady, googly eyes, and he saw it. He saw it. Okay. Probably not gonna happen. Probably, I would say, less than a 5% chance that'll actually happen, but you never know. It's like, there's people that you look back on and like, oh, they like JoyBoy. JoyBoy left the One Piece treasure, and he was a member of the Ancient Kingdom, and Roger was like, oh, JoyBoy, I wish I could have been born in your era. It just seems to be setting up that JoyBoy, at the very least, was a good guy, you know? So, I'm just saying, how many times in fiction before have we been led down that primrose path? I'm like, oh yeah, this person that we were certain was a good guy, or talked about as such a good guy, such a benefactor, you know, in their time period. Then they show up and they're complete assholes. I'm like, damn, that's not good. So, yeah, just throw that out there. But anyway, yeah. So, this also has something to do with Wano, because Oden specifically says we need to open up the country's borders for the arrival of JoyBoy. Now, I don't know if that, what does that imply? Does that imply, like, maybe JoyBoy will be arriving at Wano? Like, that's the place, like, maybe Wano back 800 years ago, that's the place where he initially made that time jump. Toki's parents were from that place, and they might have had some connection to the Time Fruit, so maybe, you know, he made that time jump at Wano, and he's going to arrive there. Oden knows he's going to arrive there, but he knows that it's like, all right, if JoyBoy arrives in Wano when it's an isolated nation, and it's so cut off from the rest of the world, that's gonna probably cause some problems, all right? We need to get this country to open borders, and so finally when JoyBoy arrives, he could just, you know, the world will be welcoming him, so to speak, right? If he really is this benefactor, this good person that's going to lead us into this new age and fulfill this great prophecy, and right, and all that good stuff, okay? So that's probably something to deal with that, but, yeah, I'm waiting for it, because we've been finding out now, to be fair, the information about JoyBoy and everything is probably going to dip away now, because we're no longer focusing on the Roger crew. Roger has departed. We're probably not going to see Roger anymore during this flashback. This is his story. We're back at Wano, and we're getting into the final phases here of this flashback, where Oden's going to go up against Orochi, as we saw in the last chapter, and then eventually Kaido, and then eventually his death in some way. I've heard theories that maybe the Orochi that he was attacking last chapter, because it's like Oden was like right about ready to just shing and then slice down Orochi. What's going to stop him from doing that? And I heard a theory that was like, well, maybe it's not actually Orochi. Maybe that was the witch. The witch was like, oh, Oden is attacking the castle. Orochi, you must flee. And then she throws Orochi into the side like in an escape tunnel. You know the castle has an escape tunnel. It's feudal Japan. Of course there's escape tunnels. It's like, here's an escape tunnel. So Orochi manages to get away, go back to Kaido, and then in the meantime, the witch assumed Orochi's form, and then Oden was just like, shing, and then slices down the witch. And then that's how the no Mi, that's how the Mane no Mi, the clone fruit, gets back into circulation so Mr. Two Bon Clay can eventually claim it. So he cuts down the witch, and Oden's like, what the hell? And then that gives Orochi enough time to be like, oh, Oden's back, oh, he's gonna be mighty sore, oh, Kaido, please help me! Kaido's like, what? Oh, Odin's back. Oh, okay. Oh boy, this is gonna be a fun afternoon. And so then that's when Kaido gets involved, goes all dragon form, fights against Odin, gets the scar and all that crap, eventually ends up getting captured. Another theory revolving around that witch is maybe the witch became Odin when they dunked them into the water, and that apparently killed him. But I don't really see that happening, because you figure, like, if she transformed into Odin and took Odin's place, I don't think she'd be willing to die for him. And also, if she's all chained up and about to be dunked into boiling water, why wouldn't she just change back? Or why wouldn't she just say, I'm the witch, I'm using my money no powers right now, and she just says information. Maybe they bound and I don't know. That one seems a little shaky. Whenever you introduce a character also on top of time travel, a character that can transform in any other character pretty much, you start to get like, oh, well, red herrings, you know, maybe it's like that person instead of that person, but we thought it was that person, but it was actually that person. So that arises a lot. But I would honestly go with the body double thing right now in the story. Like, Odin is just ready to slice her down, and then it turns out it's not actually Orochi. That makes more sense to me, so we'll just go with that. But anyway, yeah, that's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. And yeah, I'm gonna continue on a magical, whimsical, you know, wizarding world tour. I'm a Hufflepuff, in case you're curious. It's okay, I'm proud of my Hufflepuff lineage. Where is it? There it is. You don't diss the puff. Barry is Slytherin. That's pretty much everybody should have expected that one.